This is the resource for small groups and for individuals, following up on last weekend's message, which was titled, When Jesus Comes to Town. We looked at Matthew chapter 21, the first 11 verses, where Jesus rode into the city of Jerusalem. And we're looking at some very challenging questions, but some encouragement too. When Jesus rode into town, he fulfilled prophecy. Matthew, in his gospel, loves to join up Old Testament prophecy with New Testament fulfillment. That's not just an academic theological piece. Matthew wants us to know that what Jesus did was, these were not just spontaneous acts, but they fulfilled prophecies uttered hundreds of years before. What does that say to us? It says to us in a time of challenge and difficulty, when we feel pressure in our lives, that we are called to look up and realize that we are in the hands of the Lord of history and eternity. That doesn't always make life easy. It does mean that we follow the one who is able to lead us through life and has beaten the power of death. And then here's the really challenging question. Are we following, do we know the real Jesus? When Jesus rode into town, they waved palm branches and they threw cloaks before him, and they had a completely messed up idea of who he was. They thought he was a conquering military leader like Judas Maccabeus, who had rode into town 200 years earlier, kicked out the Seleucian oppressors back then who had taken the city of Jerusalem, cleansed the temple, and restored Israel. And so those people thought, here, this Jesus, He's like this other guy, Judas Maccabeus. But Jesus was not doing that at all. He was doing something far bigger than cleansing the temple. He did kick the tables over, but he came to let us know that God didn't dwell in a temple made of hands anymore, that we would be the temples of the Holy Spirit. He didn't just come to set people free from Roman oppression. He came to set us free from the oppression of sin and evil. So we're asking the question, have we got the right perception of Jesus in our hearts and minds? And frankly, here's the answer, no. No, we haven't got a perfect picture of him, because our picture of Jesus is a patchwork quilt of sermons and songs and conversations. And so we'll ask the question, is the Jesus that we serve, is he like the Jesus who likes what I like? Is he the God of my nation, the God who's like me, the God who supports my cause, the Jesus I can understand, the Jesus who wants me to be comfortable, the Jesus who's a first responder? Have we got the real Jesus? And then we see that Jesus came not only, it doesn't just come to comfort us, but he comes to stir us as well. The whole city is stirred up. That's what Jesus does. He did it when he was born. Herod was agitated and stirred by the news of his birth. Jesus doesn't just come to offer us a comfortable recliner for the rest of life. Are we available to his stirring? We see his humility too in the way that he rides into Jerusalem, not on a war horse, but on a colt, a lowly donkey. And we are called not just to admire him, but to emulate his example and have attitudes of service. Finally, we see from this story that we're called to share the news about what it means to follow Christ. And we saw the most important question in life, because those people said, who is this? When we ask that question about Jesus, the answer to it changes everything. So here's a few things for us to consider, reflect on as an individual, talk about in your small group. Why not consider, first of all, praying for those who are perhaps struggling specifically at this time, for whom life is specifically hard, and praying not just for God to bless them and strengthen them, but for God to give them a fresh revelation of his eternal power and glory. Why not talk about if we're following, can you cut this? I'll just splice it. Why not consider what temptations we might face in trying to build a profile of a Jesus that we like rather than the real Jesus as he is? Would we have a tendency to think about a Jesus who's the God of my nation, or the God of my preferences, the God who always says yes to what I want, the God who always says no. Where might we stray from the biblical revelation of the real Jesus into a Jesus that is not really authentic? And then perhaps share times when Jesus has stirred you, when you've been agitated and called to step into an uncomfortable decision that was costly and challenging. Why not talk about that? Talk about what you learned as you navigated that junction. Finally, you might want to reflect on opportunities that you've had for humility. And one of the problems about humility is the moment you decide you've got it, you've probably lost it, let's face it. But are there moments that you've had, episodes in your life, where you specifically had to humble yourself and serve? How did you do in that episode, and what did you learn? Well, whether you're reflecting by yourself or discussing this as a group, I really hope as you dig further into this story that God will strengthen you and the Holy Spirit will help you to see what He wants you to see. God bless you.